I am General Paul D. Hawkins, commander of the U.S. Military Assistance Command in Vietnam. Here today, the U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines are joined together in a common effort to help this country. Nowhere in the world today are we more aware of the inseparability of the problems of a people involved in fighting a war and building a nation than in Vietnam. For here is the rendezvous of all the historical forces in this century. The communists have long sought to take over in Vietnam, and the first phase of struggle after World War II resulted in the North-South partition directly reflecting our divided world. Now, this young nation, remaining on freedom's side, is engaged in a war which is as hidden and stealthy as it is relentless and exhausting. Responding to the request of the Republic of Vietnam, the United States has come to help, as we have helped and are helping all free people who seek to defend themselves from the communist scourge. The U.S. effort to our Vietnamese allies is a vast and comprehensive one. It involves political, economic, psychological, and military measures. All of the armed forces of the U.S. play a part. Because our efforts here are so comprehensive, the whole story cannot be told in 30 minutes. Today, our focus is on the U.S. Army Special Forces, one important part of our overall effort.
I'm James Arness. During the next 30 minutes, you're going to meet a remarkable group of Americans, members of the United States Army's Special Forces on duty in South Vietnam. The Republic of Vietnam, on the eastern edge of the Indochina Peninsula, is about as far from home as an American can be while still on Earth. When it's 7 o'clock in the morning here in Saigon, it's 7 o'clock the previous night in New York City. Army Special Forces were sent to Vietnam because they're experts, specialists in training men to fight a special kind of war. It's a dirty war, fought without uniforms on a battlefield without boundaries. A war where the friendly farmer you pass in a rice paddy may become the murderous enemy the instant the sun goes down. Sunset is beautiful in South Vietnam, but then night comes. And at night in Vietnam, men die. The communist guerrilla lives off the people, by persuasion if possible, but if propaganda fails, by terror. Fear and propaganda have turned the isolated villages of Southeast Asia into a theater of war, a war which can only be won or lost by the villagers themselves. What Americans can do is combat fear by giving them guns and the training they need to defend themselves against terrorism. And we can reply to the propaganda by actions. We can bring to these remote areas some tangible proof that the way of life we propose is a good life, worth fighting for. This is the story of a small group of Americans who are quietly trying to do that job, now in the swamps and jungles of Vietnam. Wars come in various sizes, wearing different labels. But one thing they all have in common: the innocent suffer. The guerrilla warfare being conducted against the Republic of Vietnam by the Vietnamese communists, the Viet Cong, isn't new. We saw it with minor variations in China, in Malaya, in Greece, in the Philippines, in Cuba, in Laos. It's a kind of war which recognizes no non-combatants. In Vietnam, the communist guerrillas promise progress, yet their favorite targets for assassination are school teachers, doctors, engineers, anyone trying to do today what they promise for tomorrow. Life will be lived on their terms or not at all. What happens to Vietnam will depend in the end on who wins the villages. And the government of the United States is determined that it won't be communist guerrillas. This is Major General William B. Rawson. He was then a brigadier on a recent visit to a strategic village high in the mountains of central Vietnam. As Special Assistant to the Chief of Staff for Special Warfare, he has come to inspect the village defense system, established here by a 12-man Special Forces team, a handful of Americans who in a few short months have converted a remote guerrilla-infested highland plateau into a major training center of anti-communist tribesmen. We asked General Rawson to describe the war in Vietnam and the role of the Special Forces soldier.
There are many terms which might be used to characterize the conflict now occurring in Vietnam. For the general public, the best known probably is guerrilla warfare. However we refer to it, there can be no question that armed insurgency on a large scale is taking place aimed at the destruction of a people's national independence. It is the policy of the United States government to advise and assist the people of the Republic of Vietnam in their struggle to defeat the communist insurgency which strives to eradicate their freedom. The American soldiers you will see in this film are part of our assistance effort. As members of the U.S. Army's Special Forces, they are among the most highly trained military personnel the world has known. Each of them has been trained in a variety of skills which in more conventional organizations would be distributed among 2 or more individuals. These soldiers possess the capability of going to remote, primitive regions of the world to live with the people, eat their food or share their lack of it, learn their language, their customs and taboos, and win their confidence and respect. The future of such areas as Southeast Asia ultimately may be determined by events taking place in remote jungle villages which appear on no maps, by acts of violence occurring only under the cover of darkness, by wars which can be won or lost before the world is aware that a war has even begun. This film documents a small part of what the armed forces, and particularly your Army, is doing to assure that such conflicts, wherever they may be forced upon us, can be resisted successfully by ourselves and our allies.
I'm Captain Ron Shackleton, Detachment Commander of the Special Forces personnel in this area. American advisors first began laying the groundwork for village defense in this region in September 1961. At that time, the villagers in this area were almost completely defenseless against the predatory tactics of the Viet Cong, the Vietnamese communists. Out of fear, these mountain people were forced to both feed and house roving Viet Cong patrols, and their young men were often forced into Viet Cong activities in order to protect the lives of their families. Our effort during the months we have been here have been to teach the mountaineers, who call themselves the Rade people, that they are capable of defending themselves against such tactics, that they need not be afraid. We have shown the Rade how to build stockade-type fences and how to maintain 24-hour security. This is Master Sergeant John Slover, who has just returned from observing a patrol. Through an interpreter, he will comment on his observations. Tell the patrol that they did a very good job today. There's just one point I want to stress. Some carried their weapon down like this. Carry their weapon out the ready at all times. Where their eyes are, so is the muzzle of their weapon. Not all our advisors rely on interpreters. Here we see Sergeant Bill Belch instructing the carbine in fluent Vietnamese.
Đây là khẩu súng carabine là K30 trước khi học lắp và tháo khẩu súng này. Tôi sẽ nói qua về những tính cách của khẩu súng này. Muốn bắn chết một tên quân địch, các anh có lẽ chừng 300 thước thì được với khẩu súng này, nhưng xa hơn thì chắc là không được. Nhưng mà thường thường trong những khu vực như thế này, như là rừng hay là có nhiều cây, thì thường thường không trông thấy xa được. Thế thì nếu một tên quân địch gần.
Basic instruction in the care and use of a weapon, familiar to any veteran of the U.S. Army. In this class, one of our raw day instructors is teaching his men a technique in search and seizure for arresting Viet Cong agents. Many such agents conceal themselves in friendly villages disguised as ordinary workmen. These men are from surrounding villages. They have come to our village seeking training which will enable them to provide their own defense against guerrilla bands. It is not unusual to see 200 or more of these people each week. Outside the village gate is a sign which says, "Here, no Viet Cong need apply for rice or any other assistance, that this is a free village which is no longer afraid." We have taught our friends small unit tactics and given them modern equipment with which to defend themselves. People who once defended their freedom with a crossbow are now learning to use rifles, submachine guns, and grenades.
Ma patangan. Ma. And up, now. Ebat. Bat. Da, doa, 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 da, doa.
Today, these Rade people, who are in some ways very primitive by American standards, are among the best anti-guerrilla fighters in Southeast Asia. As our program expands, new Special Forces teams are moving into other villages, always with the same goal, to teach people who value their independence how to preserve it.
Okay, Odie, your boys got all your equipment. You're all set to go just about now, aren't you? Just about. Okay, fine. Well, you know that we're going to have trouble to the south. When we first set the circle up here, VC didn't know what we're doing. It took them about a month to really figure out just what we're about to do there. So when we move to the south, they already know just about what we're going to do. And once we start building up the same defensive systems we had up here, they're going to try and hit us as soon as we start. So we're going to have to watch that.
Well, Odie, for the past couple of weeks, you and your team have been here observing my team work with the Rade people in village defense. You've been exposed to some of our training problems, our logistical problems, and some of the problems that arise from working through interpreters. If there are any questions that you or your team have at this time, or any other way that we can help you, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Ron. The last 2 weeks have been very beneficial as far as our team